Hello folks, welcome to API Test Automation with Rest Assured tutorial. I am Faisal Khatri. This video is in continuation to the previous video on testing GET request with Rest Assured. We already discussed the basics of GET request and how to send it with Query Params. If you have not checked this video, I would recommend to check it out to get the basic information on GET API request testing. The link to the video is available in the description. In this video, we'll learn how to send GET API requests with multiple Query Params, how to send GET API requests with Path Params, and how to use headers in GET API request. How to send GET API requests with multiple query params. The query params method in REST Assured allows adding multiple query parameters. For example, in the GET order API request, if we need to filter the records using order ID, user ID, and product ID, we can supply multiple query parameters in the request. Multiple query parameters can be added using the query params method, where we can add multiple parameter and their respective values one by one in the method parameter. Similarly, we can also use query param method multiple times to add the multiple query parameters. Both of these approaches are correct. However, as a best practice, we can use Java map to handle multiple query parameters. This approach is useful when dealing with dynamic or large set of parameters, as all key pairs can be stored in a map and passed in the query params method. In this test get order with multiple query param with map, we will be using a map to store multiple query parameters. We can define a map using a new hash map and then put all the different query parameters that we need and finally supply it into the query params method. Calling the log all method before the query params method is super helpful in logging the request in the console, which helps in understanding how the query parameters are passed in the request. Let's run the code and check the output. So using map, we supplied three different query params: user ID, product ID, and ID. All of these values are 1. And we can see the query params have been passed successfully in the request. We can also see in the URL, the query parameters are successfully set. Similarly, we can check out in the response that the query parameters that we supplied in the request, the API responds with the respective data only. Let's run the code where we have supplied query param method multiple times in the request and see the output. By supplying multiple query param methods and passing the query parameters one by one, we can see the output remains the same, where multiple parameters are supplied in the request. In the URL also it is successfully set, and accordingly the API filters the data according to the supplied query parameters and retrieves the response. Let's run this test where we have supplied the multiple query parameters using query params and hard coded the parameters instead of using the map and check the output. And we can see that the multiple query parameters were passed in the request, and get API request test passed successfully by retrieving the correct order details as per the query parameters that were supplied. How to send a get API request with path params. The get request can be sent using path parameters, which are essential for accessing specific resources directly within the API endpoint. They are typically used to uniquely identify a resource such as order ID, user ID, booking ID, making the request more intuitive and RESTful. Let's take an example of the get booking API from the RESTful Booker demo application. It fetches the booking details directly using the path parameters. This ID is a path parameter that will be used for retrieving the booking for the respective ID. To test the get booking with path parameters, I have already created an automated test with the REST Assured, and we can use the path param method to send the get API request with path param. We will retrieve the booking with ID 3. We have used the path param method and supplied the parameters ID where the value is 3. The URL, the get URL sends the get request along with the path parameter in it. Here, the curly braces which has the ID is a placeholder in the URL, and rest assured replaces it with the value 3 that we have already supplied using the path param method. Finally, an assertion is performed to verify that the get request was successfully sent and that it returned a successful response with a 200 OK status. Let's run this code and check the output. And we can see in the request the path parameter was supplied id equal to 3, and this id parameter was replaced with the actual value 3. In the response, we can see the booking for the id 3 has been retrieved successfully, and the test passes with it. How to use headers in the get API request? Headers in the GET request are used to pass additional information such as authentication, tokens, content type, and client details to the server. They play an important role in securing APIs and ensuring the server understands how to process the request. Let's take an example of this http bin.org website, which has a /bearer endpoint that prompts the user for authorization using bearer authentication, and it accepts the authorization token in the header. Once the header is authenticated successfully, it will return 200 status code. Otherwise, it will return 401 status code. I have already written this test auth header method, which uses the header method from the REST assured framework to supply the authorization token in the header, and rest of the things remains the same. At the end, it will verify that the status code is 200. The content type or accept headers can also be supplied to specify the format of the request and response, such as JSON or XML, ensuring proper communication between the client and server. We can use a Java map to add multiple headers and pass it to the test. In this method, I have used multiple headers using Java map and then passed on the multiple headers using headers method. For single header, I have used the header method. For multiple, we have used the headers. And in this headers method, I am supplying the values using the hash map. Let me run this test quickly and check the output. So we can see that the authentication was successful. Let me add a log all as well in the request so we can see what all headers were supplied. Similarly, I'll also add it here. Let me run the test again for the authorization. And we can see in the headers, authorization equal to bearer my hyphen token hyphen 123 was supplied, and the response came successful, like 200 OK was written in the response, and it says the API response is authenticated true and token is supplied in the response as well. Let me also run the another test where we have supplied the content type and accept headers in the using a map and check the output. So here also we can see in the headers, two different headers are supplied here, accept equal to application/JSON and content type equal to application/JSON, and the test passed successfully. That's all for this video. If you have any question, do let me know it in the comments. If you have not subscribed to my channel, please subscribe, and also check out the other videos from the same playlist for the rest assured tutorial. It's available in the description of this video. Do like and share this video with your friends. Thanks for watching.